Have you ever fallen in love and then very quickly fallen out of love? Well, I don't think it's something that you did, or even something that your partner did. More likely, I think it's something that both of you have in common. Namely, the chemical changes that accompany mating behavior in that primitive part of the brain, which is also called the limbic system. Being madly in love is a lot like taking recreational drugs. In both cases, a lot of the same neurochemicals are pounding in the same parts of that limbic system that we've been talking about. As we'll see, overstimulation, the overstimulation caused by passionate attraction, is actually only the first part of the story. Because humans, like virtually all mammals, are not naturally monogamous. That means that we're also programmed to fall out of love, to move on to a new partner. Now, why would biology have designed us that way? Because biology would be happiest if you would have a child with one partner and then move on and have a child with another partner. That increases the genetic variety of your offspring, which also improves the chances of your genes being passed on. Think about it. If conditions change, one child might be more likely to survive than the other. These days, we may be using birth control, but our behavior is still governed by that part of the brain whose job it is to propel genes into the future. So if you experience intense symptoms when you fall in love, or you quickly lose interest in your partners, or you easily get hooked on hot sex, then you should thank your ancestors and all the fooling around they did, because you are the product of their inadvertent breeding program. This evolutionary mandate to fertilize and then move on is what I call Cupid's poisoned arrow. The arrow causes us to fall in love. The poison, a series of perfectly natural neurochemical changes in that limbic system, creates emotional distance, and that urges us to move on to a new partner in pursuit of another neurochemical joyride. What touches off this deterioration in our relationships? Your passion overstimulated your limbic system, both of you, and mission accomplished after sex. That intense high then triggered a neurochemical reaction, a low, or what I call a hangover. What you felt then influenced what you saw. So over here, you saw Mr. or Ms. Right. But over here, it's possible you saw someone who looked a lot more like Mr. Hyde, or perhaps Medusa, someone with live snakes for hair. This hangover can distort your perception of each other for up to 2 weeks. And it can cause such things as feelings of annoyance with your lover, repulsion, weepy overreactions to things, or even wild attractions to others. That's its job, because a wild attraction to another will get your dopamine soaring, just as it is over here. So it's the bad news about mammalian sexuality. The fact is, evolutionary biology does not give a rat's backside about love, fidelity, or lifelong companionship. So if you want lasting harmony, it doesn't pay just to do what comes naturally in the bedroom. That's a risky proposition. The good news is that there's a way to tiptoe around Cupid's poisoned arrow to avoid that biological separation mechanism and to make intimate relationships sustainable. It is an unfamiliar solution, however, because remember, your brain is wired to prevent you from ever finding the solution I'm going to be talking about. And it's wired to make sure that you consider the solution absurd should you ever stumble upon it. However, this solution has shown up repeatedly in numerous cultures for over 2,000 years. And I think it's time that humanity gave it some serious consideration. So what am I proposing? What I'm proposing is something I call the middle path. It runs right between the horns of humanity's dilemma, which I think of as determined indulgence, which leads to the chaos I'm talking about, and then discouraged celibacy. And most of us spend a lot of our adult romantic lives hopping back and forth between these two uncomfortable prongs. The middle path does not throw you onto that neurochemical high and recovery low cycle that I've been talking about. Nor does it trip biology's separation mechanism as we project those uncomfortable neurochemicals onto each other. And it has benefits that go far beyond the relationship harmony that results from getting off that roller coaster. You learn to make love with an arousal pattern that goes like this, as opposed to like this. And you keep all your other favorite things about intimacy: the physical affection, the close companionship, pleasure, believe it or not, and a sense of satisfaction. But you can't make conventional orgasm your goal, because that would throw you right back onto that uncomfortable cycle of highs and lows. Now, is everyone still with me here? Because I just said that orgasm is not the goal, and yet sex is still fun for reasons that we'll talk about. If your pleasure isn't going to come from that neurochemical blast that passion currently has you hooked on, where is it going to come from? Well, you train yourself to make more of another neurochemical, which is called oxytocin, the cuddle hormone. And I'll be telling you a lot about oxytocin in our next program. I learned this other way of making love over a period of about a decade with a lot of trial and many errors. In those days, most of the research that I'll be sharing with you in our next program hadn't even been done. All I knew was that when I stayed with the recommendations of the ancient sages who had written about this other way to make love, the harmony in my relationship was just about effortless. But when I or my partner fell back into those good old familiar behaviors of conventional foreplay and orgasm, then that separation problem would crop up, and within about 2 weeks we would definitely notice separating behaviors. Over time, this can lead you to find that, or believe without even knowing why, that ongoing intimate relationships are the problem. And that's perfectly logical, because the problems I'm talking about show up in the form of disharmony in your relationships, and you make no connection with the sex. Sex still seems to be a great idea, but relationships are now being perceived by your subconscious as something that's threatening to your personal well-being. Meanwhile, the actual culprit, fertilization-driven sex, seems still like a great idea. A pleasure that's so intense that it's positively addictive. We can easily become hooked on the sex and yet increasingly uneasy at the thought of ongoing intimacy. Do you know anyone like that? Well, it turns out that that person is just where biology wants them. The most unfortunate repercussion when we allow biology to separate us like this is that we lose the real benefits of companionship. It's been shown in numerous studies that close, trusted, and especially harmonious companionship is associated with increased longevity, faster healing, and lower rates of illness and addiction. Research suggests that that neurochemical I mentioned, oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, is behind these gains. And experience shows that couples can train themselves to produce more of this neurochemical. So it's up to us if we want to improve our health, and we can use our intimate relationships to do that. Almost 4 years ago, I met my husband. He was ready to experiment with me and try this other way of making love. Years later, we're still making love this way and enjoying it. And in a future program, I'm going to give you details of exactly what we did to reprogram our lovemaking so that you could make the same transition if you're interested. Meanwhile, if you want more information, you can visit our website. It's www.reuniting.info, or check out a copy of Peace Between the Sheets.